So I'll actually share my screen and it's going to be super motivating because I'm starting out with a kicker. Own your data. You can actually start building your own, not only tech stack, but your own data lake, your own enterprise system, and essentially have systems that are out there today built around it to ensure that you're getting everything you need. And it's only recently that we can do something like this. And the reason is because when you think about the landscape today, or up until this point, what it's been is super fragmented. A lot of the data that's coming into the systems are coming from a different custodian who's sending data differently. It's coming through a PDF that someone's manually entering. There's a lot of stuff related to real-time data. When you're thinking of alts, that's always lagging based on what the bottleneck is and getting that data in there. So it's very difficult, especially with market changes. Like, there are big systems out there that are still T+1 and they don't have real-time pricing. So when you look at the market we just recently had between the tariffs, the prices looked very different yesterday than they do today. And if you're a manager, an advisor logging in, and you have your favorite client portal that's based off of these numbers, and someone's logging in and seeing everything look like, hey, my portfolio is doing well, but the markets are all red. Is this, let me call in. You start having to screen these calls and saying, like, is this really happening? And a lot of it's not true. And once they have that level of doubt, whether it's a client and advisor looking at that data, and it's like, this isn't really what's going on in the market, what ends up happening is the entire system breaks down. And the reason for that is because this has been enough. When you think about the more legacy systems out there, it's been enough for these people, but now it's changing. There's more demand. It's like, I can open up my phone and see the prices change. Why can't I see it in this enterprise software I'm paying money for to do the same thing for me, for my clients, etc.? So a lot of the fintech landscape and what WealthTech has done is, I think they've gotten a little too comfortable. When we spoke about comfort, they got too comfortable with the clients being okay with their systems. And where this really took a change is tech started becoming better. And with better tech, there's higher expectations of you doing a better job at, expressing what's really going on in the portfolios. So what has been leading up to this point and where the landscape has been is the SaaS model. Every solution out of there has been using what we call software as a service. And really, where we're going next with the technology that's available, and with ARQA specifically, it's being AI native. What this means is, in the SaaS model, you had to change the data to fit the business logic. And everything was hard coded into your system. So if you were going into a Black Diamond, an Adipar, an SS&C's, Axis, whatever it would be, APX, everything, you had to fit your data into how they did stuff for you to get the output correct. And you really were changing your data. So whatever from a raw data standpoint you were looking at, everything would change once it hit the system, because they needed to reconcile a certain way, or they needed the price to show up a certain way, or classically, you needed to unitize your investment for you to see any performance on it, when really it was just a one lump sum investment you made into a private equity firm. So a lot of these things had to change. Where the AI native platforms come in, and where this becomes much more interesting, is that you really don't need to take the business logic and put it on the data itself or embed it in there. You can have the business logic sit around in these agentic AIs that work with the data the way it is. So as long as you really have a clean database, what you're really doing is you're letting different AIs essentially do operations on that data. You can own all that data. And as you can see, you can actually interact with that data using natural language. So very popularly, I think a couple of months ago, Microsoft's CEO, he said, where I think a lot of these AIs are coming into play is that all these SaaS companies essentially become a CRUD database, and you're going to have these AIs who are not going to care where the data is coming from, but they're going to know the business logic is living with them of what to do with that data. And then you're going to have to get rid of the CRUD because it doesn't matter. It's just a database at the end of the way. So what's going to happen is you're going to have these advisors, and how this matters for WealthTech is you'll have advisors who can really own their data, whether they use something out of the box like an event mile marker or something else, or they just go to AWS and build their own data set. They would have the capabilities to own it all, house it, and then start leveraging AI to actually do reporting, downstream analytics, client portals, anything along those lines. And that's where ARQA has seen kind of the biggest leverage for something like this and the opportunity. And realistically, here's the product of suites. I'm going to actually talk about this is a limited, this is an extensive list because we do so much more. So I'm going to use these as my kind of triggers for what I'm going to show you in a second, and then, dissect each of these and what they mean for the larger ecosystem. If I have the raw data coming in, if it's coming in through custodian, it's coming in through an external data source from different places, what the benefit of having an AI native ecosystem and what this looks like for you is your data will be sitting in the middle of all of this, whether it's a data lake, whether it's an enterprise system you've built, and we can leverage the AI from different aspects to essentially feed what this is going to look like. So for the example of the import engine or even KorScript, where you're going to get a lot of that data, this is what's going to happen. You're going to take a lot of the data that's coming from PDFs. You're going to have to manually do the entry for it. It's going to be stuck in some box somewhere that is getting delivered to, or some portal. The AI is able to actually go out, get that data, bring it in, read it for you. So you don't need to have an OCR. You don't have to have templates. It actually reads the document end to end. It puts all that data in. The import engine itself is going to be for the custodial data feeds, for things that are a little more automated, that are coming day to day. So it could be your positions, your tax lots, your transactions, and it could be historical as well. So we can run the import engine based on historical as well as current things that are coming in, compiling, and then reconcile that data. So where the real data ingestion's value is between, leveraging both the import engine and KorScript is that there used to be maybe a couple of different ways you used to get your SFTP files from Schwab and Fidelity and all this stuff. But now we have APIs. The custodians are delivering in SFTPs. They could be delivering with other custom integrations. So instead of you running around and trying to figure out how that works, the AI is able to actually take that data, normalize it, reconcile your holdings, transactions, tax lots, prices over that entire historical period, as well as anything that's going in live. And then from that normalization, say, here's a clean data set I just brought for you, and it's in the way that you expect it to see. Now that's your data. Hold on to it, because I've done all the heavy lifting, taking it from the raw file into what it needs to look like for you to say, I have this basis of a data lake of all my transactions, holdings, history, positions, etc., and all the prices associated to it. So if you do go downstream and report on it, or you want to make some visualizations or dashboards, you know the data is good. And then from the KorScript side, obviously, realistically, humans have been doing this operation since I've been in this business. And I think AI is able to leverage statements, scanned documents, things like that that people are getting. Because as an advisor, as an operating firm, you don't know what you're going to get from clients a lot of times. And whether this investment was made as a legacy, they have a scanned document that's sitting somewhere. They're going to give you the physical document maybe, and you got to enter it in somehow. When you're doing a lot of this stuff, you're able to use something like our ARQA KorScript to process it, to get it structured essentially into the system. And more recently, we've even tested this out for like trust documents and things like that. And, what if a trust document has subtrusts and it has amendments and all this stuff? This is where the model you landed, and then you expand it to all these different use cases and become super interesting in how you can get the data out. We've taken investment documents, we've taken trusts, we've taken insurance commission statements, pretty much anything. So if you do get it in a format that KorScript can read, which is PDF, TIFF, XML, whatever you want to kind of give it, you'd be able to actually provide it into KorScript and have, from a capability standpoint, partitioned out so you can say, hey, I want to see these things and these factors and who was talking to this client between this period. So all of that's possible leveraging already stuff that's built. Imagine this is the chassis of the vehicle, and you're slowly putting all the accessories on, and you're like, can you do this document type? Can you get this type of data out of here? That's where KorScript really comes into. The import engine on the left side, though, is mostly for that repetitive data feed itself. I mean, once that data is in there, though, what do you really do with it, right? So we call it SecurityMaster right now as a next step, but realistically, it's a data master. It can be a master and the record of data across your entities as well. So SecurityMaster is, again, a little restrictive of what it's possible to do, because the AI and the agentic AI and how it understands the logic is that it can say, well, I want to do a different variations of Adam Smith I saw, and it says Adam Smith, Adam A. Smith. This is the same person or not. So it can verify a lot of that. So for us, once data is in the system, we can literally take external data sources. We can take the data that's already in there and essentially make it more robust. Add more data layers to it. So whether it's coming through, in this example, we have NASDAQ, or it could be Morningstar, it could be some pricing data, Bloomberg, whatever it is, we can take and append a much larger data lake itself that's clean, and you have the data integrity. And realistically, that's the biggest piece. If I get a custodian data set that's coming in through multiple feeds, and I have Apple where one QSIP is missing, one ticker is missing, etc., I have 5 different Apples that are showing up in my system when I go to look at who owns Apple or who's exposed to Apple due to the new China tariff. So a lot of these things are going to start mattering once you realize your data is messy. And that's where realistically the ARQA SecurityMaster comes in, because it helps you, one, aggregate all that data together, normalize it from multiple sources, resolves any duplicates, enriches the data with anything that's outside of your own data set. Because by means you don't own everything under the sun, but we can go out and get NASDAQ data, Bloomberg data, everything, and then actually plug in missing data. So if you have missing prices because you were on a system that wasn't providing you with that, or you guys were entering in month ends and then you just have transactions, well, I can put in the missing data in between with my security master to give you TWR performance historically daily and then moving forward. So it looks like you've always been with leveraging ARCA's ecosystem from the get-go. And then this way you maintain a clean and continuous updated repository for all your data. And I think a lot of folks who aren't on the operational side from the data perspective, this might not resonate as much until, I always say, like, shit hits the fan, and then you're like, well, I can't even report on this one holding. I had a client the other day say, I just want to ask ARCA, like, who owns Tesla? And it's like, well, if you don't have a clean data set, I always call it out, that's not going to work. But if you do, then there's nothing stopping you from asking queries like that for quick insights or any research. So the security master, I think it's an overlooked part of all this. But what's interesting is that a lot of the things I'm showing here are things that potentially exist in other systems or don't, but you almost have to recreate that same functionality with the agentic AI. So if you go out on your own and you're building your own data lake, you're building your own ecosystem, etc., these are the things you have to take into consideration, because if you haven't already built this itself within the system, like the SaaS model, where you have to kind of maintain the business logic, you're changing the data to fit this, and you're saying, hey, for the security master on the SaaS, let's merge these two or delete this security or do this. You're essentially messing with your own data set. And then if historically you got to go back and say, well, that wasn't correct, we did something wrong, good luck. You deleted like a data entry that was supposed to be there. So with the security master itself, it's that gap between all the stuff that exists and you see to how you want it to look, and here's the final product of my data lake itself. You can build so many agents around this data set. Here's my favorite one, the fun one, the actual AI component. So one thing I want to call out is we leverage AI across all the modules and microservices that we have. Obviously, KorScript that leverages AI to read the documents. Our import engine's leveraging AI to essentially create like any type of placeholder transactions that are missing when it's reconciling, getting data from different places for pricing, for units, etc. But what we call ARQA AI itself is the interaction between the advisor and that data. So if you want to ask natural language questions around that data, who's holding Tesla, who's exposed to France and China and the tariffs, etc., all these things really come into this box right here. And this one's the best one in my opinion because it's so new. It's such a shiny toy for folks. They're just getting into the chat GPTs, the DeepSeeks, the perplexities out there. But what we've been able to do is leverage cutting edge AI, place that on your system in the way that you can interact with it. So you can ask stuff like, what changes happened in this portfolio over the last quarter? Or, George just called me. I need to give him an update since the last time we met. What can I talk about? So a lot of this stuff becomes super interesting once you have the AI component built on top of your data, whether it's an enterprise system that has APIs exposed that we can pull on, or it's direct access to that data, or it's a data lake. A lot of those things that you're indexing already within it, the AI can learn what that looks like and then have that categorization process done. So anytime you ask questions, it's able to easily answer them. And you can specify with recent economic indicators that were released with news or whatever, so it's more relevant to the client. Once they're also like entrenched in the conversation. So the 3 things we're pushing forward with the AI now that's there, it's actually limitless, because I'll talk about some other use cases we've gotten into with some enterprise clients as well. But one of the things is domain knowledge, right? So once you do have that data set, What if I have things that I do within my own firm? And I want that to the AI to know about it. So for us, when we looked at the AI component in WealthTech, we said, well, the biggest data set that our clients are working with is the portfolio data that's coming in, and they're running around and trying to do the reports and know what to talk about. They get that ad hoc call, etc. So why don't we allow them to do quick insights? Quick insights is going to let you ask questions with the portfolio that's there without you having to build any filters and views and things like that, or dashboards to get to the answer. And coming from Invent, you know the value of that. Each thing being a widget, it's so much easier that instead of creating a widget, because I don't know what the question may be or what I care about at that minute, I just want to ask and get the data out very quickly. So our micro app does that there. Now, once that's there, then what if I have some standard procedure docs that I want the firm, if they're asking questions about, to respond, the AI to respond to them in this way? So, what if you want to change beneficiaries in Schwab? What if you want to update a record, etc.? So, we can take these documents in their PDF format, or even links, or even videos that you're using for training, and have it transcribed and fed into ARQA AI. So, you can go in there and ask questions like, hey, how would X firm do this change? Or what if I got a call from a client, they passed away, there's no next of kin, what do I do next? And then it can go through those docs, sift through thousands of pages and say, here's what you should do, here are the next steps, and realistically direct you into operation as you would like. From there, then we're doing what we call discovery. This is more on the research side, taking data that's outside in the real world, merging it with your portfolio data essentially, or essentially cross-referencing it, so you can then get a response back that's not only just siphoned to your portfolio, but it's also saying, here's what the data I see from your portfolio, and here's everything else that can affect it that I'm getting outside, whether it's news, whether it's things that are released through NASDAQ indicators, and etc. Then the final thing is actually the tasks and workflows themselves. So that's one that gets super interesting, because now we can leverage the AI to do a lot of the operations for you within your system, within your tech stack, or build a new kind of operation that you're not even thinking about. So one of those things is like client onboarding. Here's the process. I gave you the domain knowledge of how to onboard a client. Now go and do it for me and actually trigger it. Or if I do see a lot of accounts that just had a deposit of cash, can I go ahead and invest in it? So like show me which ones they are and then what I should put them into as far as a model portfolio. What are they the closest to? So give me a proposal I can present. So things like this become super exciting, because if you look back at how we think about AI and wealth tech, it's let's identify the value add cases for you initially. Let's learn what those value add cases are, and then let's actually do them for you. So then you can think of more different ways to add value to your clients and your firm and your life by not having to be in front of the computer. So the overall benefits of doing something like this, I mean, again, I'm using our product suite to kind of call out, because there are people who do like the note taking, and if that's going to be one thing you're going to add in your operation and the CRM side of it, that's great. You can go do that. You can do some stuff with the reporting. You want to push out stuff into something like a Jiffy and do the reporting, or client portal. You can kind of build what you want from the ecosystem. But realistically, where we see this is each of those things and operations are almost agents that live around the ecosystem themselves. So technically, if you were to go out and do this, the value prop that you're going to be receiving, I think, is miles beyond what you're going to be receiving with kind of out of the box or off the shelf products. And that's where you can build your own strategic insights and however you look at your data and whatever data set you want to bring in. You have the efficiencies of automating all the entries of that data. You're looking at the data quality that you sit on. If anyone says, hey, we need this report of who owns this or who's turning 50 in Texas, whatever, you have the data, you're sitting there. You don't have to run around red tail and be like, did someone update this? We know there's a rule that we already did because the AI is monitoring for it. And then obviously you're future proofing your entire firm. So realistically, wherever you go with this, at some time, you're going to be big enough where you're going to want to own your data. You're going to want to sell the firm. You're going to want to, get tucked in, whatever it is. You're future proofing all your capabilities, because whether you're the acquirer and you want to grow and build a big business around it, you're going to enable every other firm you're bringing in to be able to do the same exact things that you are. Or if you are going out to another firm, you're going to be able to easily transfer that data over to them and make this much more easy migration than you would expect, which makes your valuation higher. And all of these things can be agents to do that, right? So it's like one of my favorite kind of parts of my job is someone comes to me with a problem. They say, we're onboarding an advisor. or we're onboarding clients. And I go and I say, well, these are the two things that are similar in that process. So why don't we create that as a scalable part of the process? Here's the differences in that process where you're onboarding an advisor, you're taking this book, and you're onboarding a client, you're taking this data set. So that's going to be slightly different. But guess what? When you're doing proposal generation for prospects, it looks very similar to this client side of what data you're getting. So I can, recreate that one. So what ARQA really provides and brings to the table is that the firms who want to own their data, they want to democratize themselves away from the SaaS model, the outdated SaaS model. They don't have to go and build everything from scratch. You don't need to hire someone who's going to sit there and say, well, here's the how AI works, and here's our limitations of what we can do, etc. We can come in there and say, here's the chassis that's already built out. And each of these things from an agentic standpoint can be a part of the software, part of the process in this way. And then here's the stuff that's going to be different that we got to just develop on top of it. But guess what? Here's the efficiencies you're going to gain by doing so. That model, what's interesting to me, is resonating a lot more with enterprises, and to no surprise, because I think when you're talking about it, it's a big uptaking, but it's becoming very interesting because they have the problem already. They have the data. They're sitting on it and saying, I just need someone to merge the two together. And so for us, that's where it's been a real big, interesting indicator in the market of the appetite for wealth tech and AI. And I think it's gaining a lot of steam. But I always call back to our first T3 that we were at, where we were talking about, AI just like this. It wasn't quite as built out from the ecosystem. I would say it was more for our own platform for the advisors, and they were just dumbfounded. It was like, what are you even talking about? But at this point, I'm getting a lot of inbound stuff, questions from calls and things like that, where they're like, I just want to ask a question and get a response. And I'm like, this is what we've been saying for the last year or so, of here's how you need to interact with your data. That's where your data is actually valuable. A lot of folks like to talk about data being the new commodity, right? And they say data is a new commodity, it's a new oil. And I just recently heard this on a podcast from the Palantir CTO as well. So I'm rephrasing a little of what he said because it resonated with me and it's something I believed in for a while. Data itself doesn't really mean much. It's how you use it that it becomes valuable. So if you're calling, data the new oil, I think it's mostly, and this is his words, he says it's mostly snake oil, because you can aggregate all this data and sit on it and not do anything with it, and it's worthless. It's just a bunch of data points you have. It's only valuable when you can leverage it to know what the next step is, or you can leverage it to go and acquire more businesses or more clients. So this, I think, is not only democratizing your data, but it's actually creating usefulness to the data that you're already sitting on, because just sitting on the data alone isn't going to get you there.